Hello everyone, Nitsa Gamer here to prove that technology is stupid and that we're dumb human beings for depending on them. 007 First Light is the origin story of how James Bond became an agent where he couldn't just go shooty shooty bang bang whenever he wanted. First Light takes on a more stealth-like approach where you can use your watch to solve puzzles and you're encouraged to use your fists over your guns unless you have a license to kill. Well, I say an agent is only great without his gadgets, and since the odds are already stacked against us, we're gonna prove that our charisma and brawn is all we need to become the most badass agent in the world. Can you beat 007 First Light without using guns or gadgets? Ground rules is that we're never allowed to use our watch to hack anything, zap enemies, or make them sick. And since guns counts as gadgets as well, guns are also banned. Do note that we may have to use these gadgets for tutorial or scripted purposes, but we'll do whatever we can to never use them on our missions. The only thing we're allowed to use outside of ourselves is vehicles, since all vehicles are scripted, and keycards and keys are fair game since they don't count as gadgets. We'll do the run on the hardest difficulty, Purist, and truthfully, I'm recording this run as I'm also doing my first playthrough, and I've been doing my first playthrough on the intended difficulty, so here I am, doing it on its hardest difficulty with a challenge run on top of that. Don't think I can complete this run? Well, I'll take those odds. Anyway, let's get this run started. We wake up from our failed swimming exam and then have to escape off of Iceland, which turns out to be not covered in ice. Thankfully, the enemies on the island seem to be the guards hired from Hyrule Castle, so they are bad at seeing Bond. Now, throughout this prologue, we do technically interact with a radio, a remote to move a vehicle out of the way, use 2 syringes on ourselves, and have to pick up the detonator, but all of that is scripted. There's simply no other way around this vehicle other than to move it yourself, and you're unable to go out the window until you pick up the detonator. Trust me, I tried.
Don't leave the detonator lying there. Why don't you pick up the detonator?
But I'm not counting any of these as gadget uses. After we save the MI6 captives and trigger our signal, we get into a fight with an enemy and have to mash the button to turn the gun away from us. We're supposed to press the R2 button to shoot him, but I tried to see what would happen if we don't shoot, and while we're given a pretty long window to shoot him, sadly not doing anything will inevitably lead to us getting shot, so unfortunately we have no choice but to use our first shot. But considering that this is scripted and mandatory and we don't actually use the gun for the rest of the mission, I really don't count it as a rule breaker. At the end of the prologue, you are to trigger the detonator, but apparently if you don't press the button, Bond will press the button anyway, so technically I didn't use the gadget. One badass title sequence later, we begin the first chapter, The Needle's Eye. During the montage, we are required to use guns. I tried standing around for minutes to see if anything would happen, but apparently the timer just keeps going up with no end. I waited for about 5 minutes, which is about the length of the montage itself, and assumed that there's probably not going to be an end to it. So I just took the 3 shots, and yeah, it is paintballs and not actual bullets, but I still count as shots. The second time, I tried to impress Monroe with my painting skills, but once again had to shoot the 3 targets. Next, I had to shoot a target through a tight space. There's no alternative path, and I tried kicking and punching the target to no avail. So I shot the target and then get told I can throw a gun at the enemy's face. And apparently this guy needs training because he keeps missing me, and because I was trying to make this loser feel good about himself, I actually failed the objective. Yes, you can actually lose during the montage. Unfortunately, failing on purpose means you have to start the montage all over again. So I'm just going to play the montage properly and assume that all gun-related tutorials are mandatory. During the tutorial, you are required to take 11 shots and 2 gun throws to the face. After a friendly competition with Monroe, we do a couple force tutorials in Q Lab with our Q Watch. Aside from driving vehicles, we're going to be putting all of Q's gadgets to shame. I picked Monroe's painting since it represents our morals of not using guns, and then we do the advanced training, and right away, we have to use our watch in order to open the gate into the training grounds. I tried standing around for the off chance that someone would open it for me, and of course nothing happened. But what if I told you that this advanced training is actually optional? I walked backwards and found out that you can actually walk to the upper area, which is apparently intentional since you can find an acorn card here, and your buddies ask you this.
Bond, What you playing at?
Always do the unexpected, right?
And not only that, but you could just vault over to where the flag is and knock out one guard and just grab it and skip the entire course and the gate at the start. No gadgets necessary. Unfortunately, during June, we have to get Ally sick via watch, and we also have to shoot 2 targets with the focus tutorial, but this time with real bullets as far as I can tell instead of paintballs. We then do the final mission where we go steal the flag early so we don't have to play capture the flag in the daytime. Thankfully, it's very easy to scale the entire building and reach the flag without having to use keys or your gadgets. However, I did this while knocking out some guards, so I decided to try both stealth missions again, but this time, try not to knock out any guards. The advanced training is easy as I just wait for this guard to walk past me. The capture the flag was also easy, though I still had to do 1 mandatory takedown and 1 mandatory bluff. Aside from these 2 guards, I don't have to worry about getting caught or taking out any guards as I capture the flag and escape by boat. The night out mission is short, but has enough variety that you could definitely beat the mission without using gadgets or ever bluffing or luring, or getting a stamp from Jacksepticeye. I tried completing the mission out of order so I don't have to deal with Blondie Pauline and her boyfriend I have to piss on later.
Don't forget to flush.
But sadly, not only do I have to play the mission in order, but I am forced to use my watch to hack Joshua Pike's phone, and this is mandatory for progression. Aside from hacking Pike's phone, I never had to use my watch for the rest of the mission. Q then proceeds to not understand our challenge as he gives us 2 gadgets to use for the Q watch, and when we're given the choice to select 2 items to carry with us, the game does not allow us to leave unless we assign 3 gadgets. So just assign the 3 and never use them. The first real mission starts with all the time in the world where we judge a blonde man for handling a suitcase the normal way airports deal with them. The entire mission is mostly no different than a normal playthrough as the game provides plenty of opportunities for stealth, collecting intel, and reaching our objectives without needing to use our watch. In the basement, I wanted to see if I could somehow stealth my way through without getting caught or knocking out guards, but you gotta remember, this game is made by the same developers that made Hitman. Of course there's an opportunity to do so. Vault to the left, wait for these 2 guards to finish their conversation, and once their back is turned, switch cover, kick the door open, hide out of sight for the 1 guard that investigates, and you'll find 2 guards talking about the hat that you left behind. Once they both have their backs turned, put on the hat, and apparently nobody will care if you are in there as you can just walk through, leaving these hard laundry workers unharmed. Monroe then takes a nap and we have to fight against Chef Ramsay. Apparently Bond made a bad meal in the past and Ramsay wants to make sure to punish him for it. Now, one option to fight is to throw bottles at your enemy, but I wanted to see if I could win this fight without throwing stuff. Now, I won't lie when I say I suck at the hand-to-hand combat in this game, so it's been quite a learning curve for me as I do both my first playthrough and this challenge run simultaneously. Honestly, I barely parry attacks when I should, so here's a less efficient way to fight Gordon Ramsay. Alternate between dodging 3 attacks in a row, then punch, and sometimes Ramsay will follow up with just 1 kick which you only have to dodge once. After fighting him enough times, his twin brother Tom Felton comes in to kick your ass. Just do the same less efficient strategy, though still parry if you can. After you hit the brothers enough times, the plot advances. One car chase scene later, we jump down and are forced into focus mode to shoot this guy in the face. Now, I tried my best to shimmy my way towards the guy, and while I was able to move Bond at least twice, once at most, the game refuses to let you run at this guy, and you get killed on the spot, so there's no alternative path, so this one gunshot is mandatory. But after that, we head into the highlight of this challenge run, trying to fight off hordes of guards in a license to kill zone without using the watch or guns. This part seems impossible since it's clear the developers want you to alternate between your guns and gadgets while using melee as a last resort. So I tried doing the foolproof strategy of just running for the plane. Unfortunately, regardless of what angle or direction I run, I become a sack of meat with more holes than angel dust. I went at it for a while in the hopes of reaching the checkpoint while knocking out maybe a couple of guards on the way, but with gunfires in all directions, it was fruitless. So I did the next stupid thing, fight everyone with my bare fists alone. Thankfully, this is not only more than doable, but there's a cool quirk when it comes to close combat. Apparently, if you're fisting another guy, the other guards are kind enough to reduce the amount of times they try to shoot at Bond or miss their shots like a bunch of stormtroopers. I think this is to add to the realism of them not committing friendly fire, while also making close combat just as useful, if not more useful than using guns. Though, make no mistake that this part of the game is still designed with guns in mind. After you knock out a good amount of guards, make sure to take cover right away behind anything not wooden. Only move in once a guard gets close, a grenade gets thrown at your spot, or Bond decides to see less red around him. Even if it looks less than ideal, do not hesitate to run straight to a group of guards with charge strikes. You will be using the charge strike a lot, as it's your ultimate saving grace of making sure you fight an enemy while getting yourself in a semi-fire safe zone. Even if you have like 4 people with guns threatening to murder you, you can realistically knock all of them out with your fists and feet alone without getting killed. And if they are on the other side of cover, use the vault attack, as that move is pretty overpowered. And don't worry about the plane possibly getting away. 009 is considerate enough to not move the plane until we get close. The only thing I recommend is practice, practice, and practice, and be patient. And make sure you knock out every available guard within the start-in area before you take on the guards around the vehicles. Charge strike an enemy, knock them out, charge at another enemy if they are close enough. Otherwise, take cover behind any non-wooden spots to restore Bond's not getting shot meter to full. With enough trial and error and practice, you can actually knock out enough guards to reach the checkpoint where you go after the cable. Once on the plane, Bond will hack the controls via cutscene, and while you could argue that this is not the player hacking the controls, we still have to control the plane for the plot to advance. Realizing that we pretty much had to use our watch, Bond makes the correct decision by getting rid of his watch so we never have to use it. Unfortunately for the rest of the game, both Monroe and Cressida are off their feet for more reasons than one, and Q not only forces us to equip another watch, but to test the laser strap and flash mine. After being forced to equip 2 of these gadgets and get the service pistol that we never intend to use, we begin the next mission, The Past Never Dies. Eventually, we need to make 100k while Greenway gets our invitations to an auction. All you gotta do is complete the Scorpus and Fight Pit missions to get the right amount of money you need. While you can pickpocket the guards for cash, it's not ideal since you need to get them sick to distract them. There's a shoot at target game, which, hell no. The Scorpus mission can be done easily without using your watch or guns. Even at the end when you have to kill numerous guards with guns, thankfully melee is fair game since the guards care about not committing friendly fire. And the fight pit, you're already expected to win fists only, so the only detriment comes down to you sucking at video games. Once at the auction, we are forced to hack this polygraph so this guy loses the auction. Doing nothing results in a game over, so we have to hack with our watch. We then fight off or knock out any guards in our way onto finding 009, taking the stealth approach for safety, and this odd glitch happened. We later find 009 playing the role of the dead corpse from Uncharted 1 since too many of his men were calling him out for plagiarizing 2 Uncharted 3 chapters. After Greenway gets us out of the girls' pit by pulling the Martha card, Martha! We begin the next chapter, Beyond the Grave, which sadly forces us to use our watch to see a marking on the wall in order to move the board out of the way to progress. The game insists that we look at more markings, but we could just walk through the entire thing without using the watch. We later find evidence that suggests that 009 did not plagiarize Uncharted 3 at all, and that he is innocent. But we run into some trouble, which forces us into another license to kill zone. Just like the plane section, we just go for it, knocking out any guards, taking cover while necessary, and on the first try, we managed to sneak through the door calmer than Dumbledore as they were trying to kill me.
He's in my sight! Okay, bad news. They took out the Land Rover.
This is where you tell me you have a backup plan.
The second area, I remember having to shoot down every guard on my first playthrough, but it's more than possible to stealth through while only knocking out a select amount. The third area though, well, just like the plane chase section, there's a lot of This section is arguably tougher than the plane chase as you have snipers to worry about that can just down you in 2 shots if you're not behind cover. First, take out the 3 guards in the first area and take cover behind metal. Wait for the other guards to get close out of the dome area or move if they throw a grenade. Knock out as many guards inside the dome as you can, taking full advantage of cover, charge strikes, and vault attacks. And bear in mind that there is a way for you and the guards to go around the dome on the right side, perfect for both sides to flank each other. In the third area, you have multiple snipers above, so stay in cover underneath and make use of sabotaging the steam pipe to reduce the amount of bullets breezing past you. And whatever you do not run ahead and make sure you take out the snipers from above, as they have caused so many game overs in the majority of attempts. Once everyone before the second dome is knocked out, proceed to punch out every remaining guard until the sound of gunfire stops. This took about 37 minutes of attempts till we managed to make Bond beat the odds again with his own brawn. After our vehicle gets flipped over and the evidence to prove 009 is not a copycat of Uncharted 3 gets blown up, we have a shootout section. We of course try to charge strike the guards, but regardless of where Bond's getting shot meter is at, he always has an instant heart attack before he can get to cover. Try any direction you want or play on Novice difficulty, the game insists that you stay behind the vehicle with Greenway, and waiting it out is not an option. The enemies will flank you on the right side and they never approach you. They stay behind the very cover that causes Bond to have a heart attack, and regardless of how many bullets you take, the plot refuses to advance. While we can get through this section without gadgets, we have to use our guns. But is it based on how many enemies we kill or how many shots we fire? Well, if you run out of ammo, Greenway will give you extra magazines, and if you shoot at nothing, apparently Greenway has Mary Poppins underwear full of magazines that he never runs out of. The unfortunate thing is that shooting at nothing does not result in the plot advancing, so sadly, we have no choice but to shoot these enemies. Now, I don't know how many enemies need to die for the plot to progress, but I shot about 9 guards, and that seems to be enough for Greenway to pretend that he doesn't have an endless stash of ammo in his underwear. Actually, last minute addition to the video here as I decided to scout this fight further, and I was being a little dumb counting 9 kills instead of the amount of bullets being fired. Apparently, the limitation of shots is not based on the amount of guys you killed, but you killing the right amount of guys and going through the gun that you have, the pistol that Greenway gives you, and at least 1 magazine from his underwear. Even after killing 9 guys with the rifle, we still have to grab Greenway's pistol and empty the additional magazine he gives us, adding the total amount of bullets. That means we have to shoot 31 bullets, and if anything, this is more accurate information than the amount of enemies you have to kill.
Any last words?
Despite the verbal hearsay that 009 did not plagiarize Uncharted, MI6 pulls a Nitsa Gamer and decides to close the case by doing absolutely nothing. Although that challenge run was the worst and I don't want to relive it again, so we take it out on 2 intruders in Bond's apartment and cause absolute chaos wrecking a building with a crane. Thankfully there's no gadget or gun uses as we reach the next chapter, Uninvited. And this is when IO clearly did not give us multiple options. In order to enter the web gala, we need an invite, which we can pickpocket from numerous NPCs. However, the issue is that that's your only option. In order to pickpocket, we have to use one of our gadgets to get someone sick, allowing them to be distracted long enough to pickpocket them. I tried looking around for alternative solutions, and the only solution is to get past the 3 guards by getting all 3 of them sick. I tried looking for areas where I could climb, and while the code room looked promising, the game gives me no option to interact with anyone or vault over to sneak through the code room. I can't help but feel like that there's an alternate path that I'm missing, but I'm quite confident IO is forcing us to use our gadget here. So after a while of finding no options, I get an NPC sick and steal their invitation and continue with the rest of the mission. Sadly, we have a similar story in the basement. We have to use one of our gadgets in order to break the padlock, and trust me, I tried seeing if there was an alternate path around, but sadly, there's not. So that's a second gadget use during this chapter. We then have to fight Grindelwald. In a normal playthrough, you're expected to use your gadgets to stun him 3 times with gear around the basement. However, it is possible to do damage to him if you sneak up on him from behind. but only once. No matter how many times we sneak behind Grindelwald, he always parries our attacks. So while we're able to get rid of Grindelwald's first health bar with a takedown attack from behind, we unfortunately have to use our watch twice to deal the last 2 bars of damage. After we kill Grindelwald, we leave it up to Warner Brothers to find a caster replacement as we go after Sir Nicholas Webb after finding out that he's the big bad guy. But first, we use our charm on his son as he hits on us. While we are hacking his phone, technically it is Moneypenny that is doing the hacking and not Bond. It also turns out it's Bring Your Gun to Work Day as we knock out some guards on our way out. Just remember during the stealth sections that if you need to raise your instinct meter to bluff or lure, you will need to knock out some guards. You will need 3 instincts to bluff or lure, and your capacity is 6, so use bluffing wisely. After the courtyard, we have another license to kill section where we somehow managed to defeat all of them in hand-to-hand combat while they all use guns and body armor. I managed to find a safe place in the corner back room to take cover as I had the guards come at me one at a time. After garbage duty and fulfilling Pepsi's contract to smash a Coca-Cola truck, we meet up with Greenway, pointlessly assign our gadgets, and infiltrate Webb's building in the next chapter, Knightfall. Now while we're able to open the first doors for Greenway, the second doors requires us to use our Q-pin. I tried to proceed on without him, but it turns out one option to vault in this one area is not available until we help Greenway go through the damn door. He refuses to take the shortcut through the bathroom for some dumb reason. I mean, I'm pretty sure he has an arm problem, not a leg problem. And as far as I know, there's no keycard we can pick up to bypass using our watch. So, with our first watch use of the mission, we have a tactical pause with Greenway, vault over the previously unvaultable object, and of course have to hack a second door for Greenway. Thankfully, Best Ally Robot Vacuum opens the door for us, but unfortunately we have to use our watch once again to open the doors to a meeting room to progress. Already, this mission is not off to a good start. After the penthouse, you are encouraged to take a right when you are on a countdown to get to where Isola is. However, going through the vent requires you to use your watch, so instead, just have the entire office chase after you, and you should still be able to get through the elevator without having to knock anyone out. But they will be close to knocking you out. Hopefully you have enough instinct to be able to bluff so you can steal the locker key from the robot's waist. While activating the individual servers, one trick you can do if you don't have any distraction opportunities or instinct to lure is to play peekaboo. This is a trick that is also used in Hitman World of Assassination, the previous game trilogy IO Interactive made, where if you make their detection go from white to yellow, but if the yellow arrow doesn't completely fill, then they will investigate the area they saw you. This can work as a free way to lure them into spots where you can take them down without getting spotted. And remember, knocking out guards has the advantage of giving you instinct so you can bluff or lure. After finding out 009 truly didn't plagiarize Uncharted, Greenway forces us to use a missile pen to blow our way out. We then have to get out of the building with a larger license to kill section, and unfortunately, once you reach up to the higher areas, you will have to deal with snipers shooting at you from across, where even being in hand-to-hand combat will not save you. So make sure you take advantage of covers, pray you reach a checkpoint, and get lost for a good while as it's easy to lose your way. Just take out any guards, use cover when necessary, avoid being in the sight of snipers, and eventually you can make it through this section and the last section and escape via helicopter. Back at MI6, get the new service pistol with a silencer, which we will never use, and head through the sewers to our next chapter, Time to Die in Vietnam. We will have to equip the Q glasses, which you could argue is a gadget, but I personally won't count it since Moneypenny is technically making more use out of seeing my bathroom business. We come across a lame cameo, vault ourselves around the guards to give Teresa the Q track, vault up to Ramon's villa while bluffing to bypass the ground guards. I threaten the bartender to sneak in the back for the keys and drug White's drink with the Q track. We do one last thing and do some biology with the scientists. We do the intense gameplay of tying a bow tie, And unfortunately, it seems Damien and his men have cut our party short as they have 2 of our drugged victims held against their will. At first I thought I was stuck on the rooftop as all the skylights require my watch to open, and dropping down or going back the way I came is not an option. And while Lure the guards got their attention, they refused to look up like all bad guards in video games. But apparently there is an open window you can drop through. We punch Ellis out for not drinking responsibly, punch our way through what dumbasses think Vietnam is like nowadays. We fight the recasting of Grindelwald in hand-to-hand combat, leaving the replacement to die a painful death as he gets to bother Norman Reedus in a Vietnam War zone instead. Afterwards, we get to see that Damien is really twisted as he wants to cut our dick off, but thankfully we have a Deus Greenway to save the day. Now we do the next section in cuffs, but apparently the game requires us to use the Q lens to order Greenway to fire at a target. Now, you could argue that this is the use of a gadget, but the thing is, Bond doesn't have his watch.
Damien took my watch.
See? Now, you could just simply press the L1 button and just not give a command, as Greenway will thankfully be considerate enough to shoot the enemies that Bond tries to go up against. Just run at the enemies and Greenway will eventually shoot them. Go between cover, wait for them to come towards you, and if they throw grenades at you, then be sure to run at them as there's less gunfire coming your way. It will take numerous attempts, but it is possible to get through the area cuffed without telling Greenway where to shoot. Fortunately, we lose the cuffs, allowing us to do close combat again, but still have Greenway's help for the first little bit. There is one moment where the vehicle we drive stops working and we're told to shoot at the enemies while Greenway tries to start the vehicle again, but all we have to do is just stay in cover. No need to shoot before we drive again. And then we get a boss fight with Damien. Just throw objects at him and punch. Once on the ground with the lights, thankfully we don't need to use the watch. Just flip the switch to stun Damien and throw the rare object in order to do damage to him. After giving Damien a painful death, we have another tactical pause, and M decides to be incompetent by doing absolutely nothing about Nicholas Webb, and even Moneypenny seems to want to join her Luigi party. Since we want nothing to do for a nothing party, we go to the Q's lab and steal some gadgets, a gun, and a watch because clearly Bond forgets what kind of run we're doing. Thankfully we can escape through the lockdown room without needing to use the watch. Since Monroe and Cressida are still off their feet, and I have a gut feeling that Greenway is going to force us to open doors with our watch again, I go on a boat ride with Isola into the penultimate chapter, Wave of the Future. The first obstacle comes when you have to steal some ID bracelets to get onto the cable car. Nora's ID is easy to steal as there's 2 electronic equipment we can sabotage to distract the Watchers. As for stealing David Somerset's ID, well, let's just say, unlike the previous missions where there were multiple opportunities of approaching your objectives, for the most part, there's only one way of collecting the IDs, and unfortunately the only way to progress is to hack the HR manager's phone and later steal it to find David Somerset. And even though you could find David yourself, there's no prompt to take the ID till you do the hack and steal the phone. Also, praise this woman for being able to sit in midair like that. So, with one gadget used so far, Isola insists that we break the run further by giving us an electronic shot pistol attachment. And let's just say, this one gadget alone is going to increase our minimalist count further. Not even a minute in, and already we have to use one electric shot in order to access the elevator. Once we arrive at robotics, Ferguson insists that we test a gadget to move a ball named Reki around to crash some crates. There's no way to crash multiple crates in one roll, so this increases our gadget count by 4. And then Ferguson insists that we grab a gun and shoot a robot 10 frickin' times. Yes, we're not that far into the chapter and already we're in the double digits. God damn you, Ferguson. We calm our nerves by playing The End of the World, which, fun fact, was also being sung during the Web Gala mission. Now, we could do this shooting test by shooting this robot behind the robot, but without requiring one gadget use and many shots with guns, the more minimalistic option is to get this one person sick and bring up the heat so we can control the robot to do the robot. Unfortunately, we also have to use another ESP in order to access the elevator, then another ESP to open a door outside. After figuring out where Hyperion is, we have multiple license to kill sections to go through. For the first section, just simply go on the right side and run straight to the freight lift. You don't really have to deal with any of the guards unless they stand in your way. Unfortunately, we will have to disable the lift brakes by shooting 2 different ESPs at it, and then we get forced into a fight against a robot where apparently we can only destroy them with explosives. I check with my fists, but they don't explode, and volt attacks are pretty useless against the robot. Thankfully, I had the foresight of bringing the missile pen with me, so one shot was enough to destroy the robot. Also, I discovered this odd glitch, but could only replicate it a couple times. Next, we release a familiar looking ball by releasing 4 of its locks while robots are trying to kill us. Thankfully, we can outrun them, so we can try to minimize the amount of times we use Recce. We use them once to roll through the glass, and once you clear access to the fan, roll Recce just one more time to get to the lower level. On the lower level, just roll Recce 3 times to destroy the 3 generators. Avoid the robots best you can, and once all 3 generators go down, the robots go down too. Eventually we find Hyperion, but even this clanker wants to add to our minimalist counter. We use an ESP on this fan, we need to hack this control panel to bring a bridge to us, we need to shoot another ESP so we can climb down some wires, another ESP so we can go down this wire, and at least one last ESP to access the elevator. Jeez, so many uses of gadgets during this mission. Anyway, we somehow survive this fall and we have to chase down Isola by boat, and we're encouraged to use the cannon. But we really don't want to fire the cannon. There's mines around that are in the way, but we just have to simply avoid them as we chase after her. After catching up to her, we go from Antarctica and end up on the upper hemisphere for the final chapter, for England. We start off without a gun or a watch, so we're already off to a good start. As you fight your way through the office, you're going to be dealing with enemies with very damaging guns and high armor, but just go with the strategy of fighting them with charge strikes and make good use of cover to remind Bond that he hasn't been shot yet. When you reach the overview office where Moneypenny's office is, you want to knock out every guard and be careful not to be in the line of sight of snipers during close combat near the end, as it's super easy to die. Once every guard is dead, the game wants you to worry about the snipers, but you can just ignore them and wait for the prompt to open up the vent. After you go through the elevator, you disarm the first guard, and while the game forces you into focus, you actually don't have to shoot. Wait it out and just punch out the remaining guards. We then find out Damien has an extra life and his own Iron Man suit. As he escapes with Thea, Q gives us a new watch that regenerates energy, but not like we plan to use it. Unfortunately, we have to use our watch to activate not just 1, not just 2, but 3 fuse boxes to get to the Q lab, and this moment is quite scary because you see all those arrows? That's how many guards we have to fight. We're supposed to use our watch to activate the traps to knock the guards out, but that's not going to be our plan. We just continue to do our foolproof strategy of using our fists and the odd thing to interact with. After picking up the keys and sticking around the computer to overwrite the lockdown, we somehow got through Q Lab much easier than I expected. However, once we reach the vehicle, this is where the biggest problem is because we have so many guards that we cannot reach, and we cannot escape from the car, and we cannot drive up to run them over, and the game will not progress until all enemies are dead. If you wait around for a while, you can shoot 3 missiles instead of using the guns on the car, and thankfully it quickly reloads the 3 missiles. Although, how many missiles are required to get past this encounter? Honestly, it's going to be near impossible to determine that because you've got to kill a horde of enemies, and sometimes even the missiles will miss the enemies and the armored ones can take damage from explosives and still not die. I used about 19 missiles, though 4 of them miss killing a target, and even if I don't count the ones that I miss, this can definitely be minimized. But I don't have hours of my life that I want to waste to figure out what the minimum amount of missiles is, so I'm just going to have the missiles as a separate counter. If you guys want to figure out what the absolute minimum is, go at it. Eventually, we reach the final boss fight against Damien. First, we need to be close enough to him so we can hack his suit. And no, I'm not going to count this as a gadget use since, unlike hacking Pike's phone, this hack happens automatically. This can be very tricky as he can easily kill us with 2 bullets. I found this spot in the upper left corner to be a great spot where I can just constantly go around playing cat and mouse until I eventually hack him. Unfortunately, we just disabled his jammer to allow us to use our gadgets. Unfortunately, we'll have to use environmental damage to him at least 5 times, meaning 5 gadget uses. We then proceed to the final round where we have to avoid getting shot and overwrite the turrets. After we override the first turret, it will mimic us shooting, and in order for the plot to progress, we have to shoot at Damien 5 times, and then we reach this barrier with the explosive barrels. I tried to see if there is a way for Damien or the turret to blow these barrels up for us, but it seems like even if they can, I just get killed in the explosion. I had a close call where I was able to have it explode and not die right away, but because of the impact, it doesn't leave Bond enough time to vault over before he gets shot. Maybe it's possible with enough luck, but I went at it for a good dozen attempts and didn't really seem to get any promising results. So we used one shot to blow the barrels up. After finishing the run though, I wanted to see if I could make a difference on Novice difficulty where we can at least take more damage and there's less gunfire coming our way. But it did seem to make a difference on a lower difficulty. Then, this happened.
That thought while I fetch the world's smallest violin.
So yes, we could actually take a shot off the counter since it's possible on a lower difficulty. Once we override the second turret, 5 more shots brings Damien down. Now, there does seem to be a health bar difference between when the checkpoint loads after the first turret and when you finish the first turret and don't die when you reach the second turret, but I can assure you that it still takes 5 shots regardless of where the health bar is at. With Damien successfully murdered for a second time and our crimes of insubordination excused, we have become 007 and end our No Guns and Gadgets challenge run of 007 First Light. So, can you beat the game without using guns or gadgets? Definitely not. But considering that pretty much every single one of these uses requires us to use them for tutorial or mandatory progression purposes, I think the ultimate deal breaker is whether or not we used a gadget or gun at a moment where it was optional. And there's probably a good chance that I used it at some point where I could have skipped the use of a bullet or a gadget. If so, I'm sure discoveries or even glitches to bypass these mandatory uses will be found. So, would I recommend this run? Well, definitely not for the whole game, but I definitely recommend trying the run in the License to Kill zones where you're expected to use guns, as nothing feels more satisfying than knocking out hundreds of gunmen with your fists and feet alone. Other than these sections, I recommend just getting the game and playing it however you want, guns and gadgets. While this is not my first 007 game played, it's the only one that I've beaten, so if you're a fan of this franchise, then be sure to recommend some of the other games to me in the comments below. Anyway, if you like this video, be sure to give it a like, comment, and subscribe, and ding the bell for more Nitsa Gamer content. Also, special thanks to my channel members including FurDC25. If you'd like to have your name at the end of a Nitsa Gamer video, be sure to become a channel member today. There's more challenges to come, and all I can say is, if the odds are against your favor, in real life they likely are, so don't risk it because you are not Bond. James Bond.